On April 15, 2026, a customs officer at the Nairobi's International Airport opened a piece of carry-on luggage and was immediately set upon by 2,248 ants. This was not an accident. This was a business plan. We will be discussing it along with 3 other instances where travelers got discovered carrying some suspicious items at customs. That is precisely the part that I will be examining today, not simply what these individuals did, but the precise cognitive miscalculation that led them to believe it would work. So, just stay with me and let's get into it. So let's return to Nairobi. So a gentleman by the name of Zang was detained at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The charge was illegal export of wildlife. The wildlife, 2,248 live ants. Allow me to provide a little bit of relevant context. These were not random ants. Zang had selected with evident deliberation primarily what they call cephalotes, the giant African harvester ant, a species so commercially valued up that a single queen can get up to $150 to $200 on the collector's market. Zang had packed his inventory into specialized test tubes which were sealed with cotton wool stoppers, a design intended to maintain the ants' survival during the transit while minimizing their tendency to make their presence known to airport security personnel. Obviously, that didn't work very good. Investigators subsequently established that Zang was not operating independently. He was a node within a broader smuggling network, one that had the previous year implicated a group of Belgian teenagers who had attempted a nearly identical extraction from the exact same region. And we got to pause here just to note that when your criminal enterprise was previously staffed and run by Belgian teenagers and you're still proceeding with the business model, your organizational risk assessment may benefit from a second opinion. This is a textbook case of optimism bias, the documented human tendency that rates one's own probability of negative outcomes as far lower than the evidence supports. So for instance, approximately 80% of people believe that they are above average drivers. A comparable proportion of international ant smugglers, it would appear, believe they are above average at not getting caught. Regrettably, the ants were counted in open court, all 2,248 of them. Zang was sentenced to 1 year in prison and a fine of 1 million Kenyan shillings. That's approximately 7,700 US dollars for those of you keeping track. Failure to pay would trigger an additional year of incarceration, so we're waiting to see if that happens or not. As for the ants, Kenyan wildlife authorities were required to sort, count, and formally catalog all 2,248 live biting insects as admissible court evidence. There's no elegant framing for this process. It was, to use a technical term, suboptimal for all parties present. And yet, compared to what we are about to examine, the ants were child's play. But before we get to the next case, I gotta just ask one question and see if I can get an answer. Do you really think that there were actually 2,248 ants? Because that seems kind of like a little bit of a suspicious number. I suspect that the customs officers actually lost 2 of them. Do you think the guy went through all that trouble and then ended with 2,248? I just doubt it. We move now to Los Angeles International Airport. The year is 2002. The individual in question is Robert Cusack, returning from Thailand with luggage that, by any objective standard, warranted a more comprehensive declaration form. When customs officers opened his suitcase, 4 rare birds of paradise exited the bag and conducted an unscheduled aerial survey of the terminal, as birds of paradise will tend to do whenever you set them free from a luggage. This was, from an operational security standpoint, a bit of a problem. Officers, having noted avian development, asked Cusack the standard follow-up question: did he have anything else to declare? Cusack, obviously, being the honest and upstanding man that he was, he answered honestly. And he said, and I am quoting here, "I have monkeys in my pants." He was not being metaphorical. Secured within his undergarments were 2 pygmy slow lorises. These are endangered primates native to Southeast Asia, each roughly the size of a closed fist, and each willing to endure considerable personal inconvenience in the service of international relocation. Now, just really quickly though, if this survey of suboptimal decision making is proving useful, a subscription to this channel would be appreciated. The button is directly below. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, the logistics. Slow lorises, or lori, are nocturnal, mildly venomous, and not historically cooperative during clothing-based transit. The fact that Cusack successfully concealed 2 of them through an international flight suggests either extraordinary sedation protocol or extraordinary pain tolerance. The court records do not clarify which it was. What they do confirm is that Robert Cusack was sentenced to 5.5 months in federal prison, a penalty that by the standards of this particular industry represents one of the more moderate outcomes in our case files today. According to court documents, it appears that Mr. Cusack was given a lighter sentence due to the fact that he had previously been diagnosed with AIDS. Go figure, right? But we need to pause real quick for an important community research question. How many slow lorises do you believe you could fit into your undergarments before the situation became logistically unworkable? Leave your estimates in the comments below. And this is a great one. This is number 3. In 2005, Sharon Naismith arrived at Melbourne Airport from Singapore wearing what customs officers would later describe in their official report as a bulky skirt. The skirt did not trigger any visual concern. What triggered concern was the sound coming from the skirt. Officers reported hearing a distinct flipping and splashing noise emanating from the vicinity of Miss Naismith's waist region. This is not, it should be noted, a noise that the human body typically produces unassisted during standard customs walkthroughs. Usually I just hear things like this in the bedroom, you know. Upon inspection, officers discovered a custom-sewn apron concealed beneath the skirt. The apron contained 15 individual plastic bags, each filled with water, the water containing 51 tropical fish. Among the fish, the Asian arowana, a species of such rarity and commercial value that a single specimen can fetch tens of thousands of dollars in the exotic fish market. Unbelievable. The total operational payload, fish, water, containment, apparatus, and associated infrastructure was secured to a human being who then attempted to walk through one of the world's most security-conscious airports. Administratively speaking, the structural and auditory demands for this arrangement were considerable. Now, what Naismith, Cusack, and Zang all operationally relied upon is a principle psychologists call script theory, the idea that routine situations run on autopilot. Customs checkpoints follow a predictable sequence, and smugglers bet that the officers won't deviate from that traditional sequence. The flaw in this instance was that 51 fish collectively refused to remain on script. The legal outcome was, by Australian wildlife enforcement standards at the time, relatively lenient. Miss Naismith pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 9 months of community service. She had faced a statutory minimum of 10 years. The distance between what the theoretical ceiling and the sentence actually handed down is, in this field, a recurring pattern, and one that, as we are about to see, has since been formally corrected. Now, granted, I believe that they just gave her an easy sentence because she was a woman, but that's just me. But I do want to know, do you think this was the best way to attempt to smuggle fish? There have to be better ways, right? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, on to the number 4 major crime. In early 2026, an Australian court handed down what the prosecutors confirmed as the heaviest wildlife trafficking sentence in the country's recorded history. The recipient, Neil Simpson, age 61. The enterprise was a multi-year, multi-continent reptile export operation. The concealment infrastructure was popcorn bags, biscuit tins, and of all things, women's handbags. Simpson had developed what investigators characterized as a sophisticated supply chain for the export of Australian native reptiles, things like blue-tongued lizards, bearded dragons, and related species. And obviously he was selling them to buyers across Asia and Europe. To prevent detection during transit, animals were individually packaged and in several documented cases taped into static positions designed to eliminate movement and noise during things like X-ray screening. This is the point at which I will note for the record that no degree of clinical detachment makes the phrase taped into a popcorn bag a comfortable sequence of words to deliver. Simpson, for all of his effort, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. This represented a significant and deliberate policy departure. Wildlife crime, now formally categorized by Interpol and the United Nations as a Tier A transnational organized crime, placed alongside narcotics trafficking and human trafficking in terms of enforcement priority, the global illegal wildlife trade generates an estimated $7 to $23 billion annually, and it is the 4th largest criminal industry on Earth. I personally believe that 7 to 23 billion is a hell of a gap. Like, come on, can't you do better and figure out like what the actual numbers are? Oh yeah, that's right, you're not catching most of them. Oh well. The popcorn bag was not a novelty, it was a logistic choice made within a multi-billion-dollar industry that has until very recently operated with limited legal consequence. That calculation has now likely been revised. So, what do these 4 cases share beyond a mutual disregard for customs declaration forms? The optimism bias we identified at the outset. Each individual conducted a personal risk-reward assessment and arrived at the conclusion that the outcome would be favorable. The ants were small. The birds were briefly contained. The skirt was convincing from what the officers say until it splashed everywhere. And the popcorn bags were unremarkable until they moved. In each instance, the enforcement system did what functioning systems do when operating correctly. They noticed. The lesson, if one is required for this, the distance between a plan that is technically executable and a plan that is legally advisable is one that human beings have a well-documented, historically consistent, and apparently self-renewing tendency to underestimate. And regrettably, there is no evidence this tendency is in decline. Now, the comment section requires your input on the outstanding matter. Which of these represents the more significant operational miscalculation? The man who stored 2 primates in his undergarments, or the woman who constructed a functional aquarium beneath her skirt and then attempted to walk through a major international airport with it? Make your case below. The responses will be reviewed with great clinical interest. And obviously, if you would like to continue your education in historically documented human miscalculation, the previous case file on this channel is available on the screen now, and it covers an application of the legal system to pigs. In the long arc of recording history, something more common than you may actually expect. The link is there. Clicking it is straightforward. And obviously, as we regularly say here, subscribe and stay, as always, clinically detached.